Hi, this is Kevin Pawlowski from Paradise Found Studio, and I'm really excited today because I'm talking to Mickey Wells at the Southwest Bronze Studio in Amarillo, Texas. And this is very near and dear to my heart because I've lived for 12 years in Amarillo, Texas. So a lot of exposure to his work. So I'm really excited about this. Mickey, thanks for joining with me today.
No problem. My pleasure.
Now, it looks like you started working around 13, and by 14, you were actually selling work. Now, why did you decide to go into commercial art when you went to college?
Originally, I wanted to be an illustrator. Some of the, Frank Fazzetti type stuff is what I was really interested in.
So like Conan and that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. But later, after I got into it, I was also sculpting at the same time and fell in love with that more than the commercial.
I understand you worked for Phil White in the early part of your career.
Yeah, he was a Western artist, and I ended up working for him basically for free. The casting process is so expensive. I asked him, I said, I will work for you free if you show me how to do this and let me cast my stuff at cost. And he said, I'm going to go get coffee. You clean up my shop, and then we'll talk. So I cleaned everything. And he got back and he said, well, looks like you're serious. And at the end of 2 years, he was getting tired of doing it. So he called me and said, you can have everything I have. Start your own fountain. So I went over there and loaded up all the equipment, took it, set up my own backyard fountain.
That's a great break for a young artist, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So, now I want to talk about the Cross Ministries full-scale stations of the cross. Now, for those of you that aren't from the panhandle of Texas, you drive and drive and drive, and it's flat as can be. You can see forever, and all of a sudden this cross comes over, okay? And when you pull in, and this is Groom, Texas, when you pull in, it's surrounded by stations of the cross, full scale. I lived there for 12 years, so me and my family would go there on Good Friday, and that was real important to us, and a real powerful experience. So, Mickey, obviously a lot of your work is represented in there. So how did you get into that project?
I heard they were building a cross in Groom and they were wanting sculptors around. So I went and put a bid in and talked to them and got to know them. And they sent me to the Monsignor in Amarillo, and he looked at me. He said, we want you to do the sculptures, but you have to make me a promise. Don't put cowboy boots on Jesus. Because all the other illustrations of my art were all Western pieces. And I did 27 life sizes.
Did you have someone model for Jesus?
Oh yeah, all my sculptures I use a model for, but I don't necessarily make them look like the figure that they're going to depict. I mostly use the model for the reality of the wrinkles, the way the body's held. A friend of mine posed for most of the Jesus figures, and when it came to posing he had the cross, strong guy, so he put the cross on, and it just didn't look right. He looked like it was too easy. So I told him my camera was messing up. You're going to have to wait a minute. And I waited about 5 minutes. And as I did, I noticed his weight shift, his whole body attitude changed. He said, you need to hurry. This is getting heavy. I said, okay, I'm ready. But that got the reality of it, where I could capture that body language.
Now the agony of Jesus, is tough to look at. Because you're talking, when he's getting nailed, through the hand. And the agony in his face. Was that personal experience? Is that tough for you to do?
It was. Plus, I did a lot of research, not only reading the Bible, but looking at the Shroud of Turin and armor that I did for the soldiers, the way the armor was built and the way it actually was. Kind of constructed, but using clay as the format or the medium.
So on the 13th station, you got Jesus being taken down from the cross, and it's your take on the Pieta. Now this is done by so many artists. Michelangelo, of course, being one of the more famous. Did you use any of those as reference, or were you resistant to kind of get your own take on the image?
Well, I did because they wanted me to. That was the favorite image or the favorite sculpture of the gentleman painting. And I grew up my whole life drawing that and studying Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci and all that. But I did make changes. There's the wounds from the whip I have in the sculpture. It shows the little marks in his skin where the whip took out flesh.
The scale certainly is the big difference, right? The Jesus's scale compared to Mary. Uh,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's funny. Yours is, of course, more realistic. He looks huge because your whole life you see Michelangelo's with the smaller Jesus.
Yeah, and that's one of the big differences. I wanted to make it to scale to be realistic. I mean, to be like, I mean, she wouldn't have been a big woman, you know, a tall woman. So I wanted to make her relatively closer to the size of that day.
Looking at the crucifixion, and this always interests me because it almost tells a story. You're capturing the moment where Jesus dies, but the two criminals are still alive, and their posture is so different from each other. And of course, there's a story in the Bible of behind one had redemption, the other one did not.
Well, we was wanting to show that the one is kind of trying to reach out to Jesus at that point when he died, and the other one is still struggling, trying to get off the cross and trying to live. I mean, crucifixion, you basically smothered to death because you couldn't pick up your weight to take a breath, or they broke your legs so you'd die sooner. But you smothered to death, and the thief that was unrepentant is still struggling.
So on the image of the crucifixion, did you do the research of the nail where the nail? Because there's a lot of discussion, right? Of
Well, there used to be, but now it's pretty well been defined because of Romans crucified a lot of people, and they have found these bodies that were thrown into ditches, and they all, most of them still had the nail in their wrist. That what it would do when you put the nail in the wrist is it makes your thumb come down because it smashes that tendon, and that's why the Jesus figure's hands are like that, because it smashes that tendon and pulls that hand down. But here it wouldn't hold your body weight, but through these cluster of bones here, it would hold your weight for as long as you were alive until you rotted on it. It would still, as long as that bone was there, you'd still be there.
so you're working out of Amarillo, Texas, and so how did you get involved in the Shrine of Christ's Passion all the way in St. John, Indiana?
I got a phone call one day from a gentleman, Frank Schillings is his name, and his wife Shirley Schillings. Fabulous people. I mean, heart for God, that wondered if I was the artist that did the ones in Groom. And I said, yes, sir. He said, good. I've been looking for you everywhere. Nobody would tell me your name. They were looking for an artist to do some figures. And I ended up doing 44 figures for him.
Wow, 44. So how many trips to Indiana was that?
About 26. They have a beautiful and absolutely beautiful setup there. It's amazing. They spent millions on landscaping and research, and they had the Chicago Philharmonic write songs for each station. Bill Curtis narrates each station. It's amazing what they've done.
You're talking full scale.
Right. Yeah, all life size.
And then spread out, right? You had explained that to me earlier. You can't see one statue when you're seeing, when you're around another. So you're you're going through a journey through this garden, right? And seeing each statue in and itself.
I did a Last Supper there, but it was just the Jesus figure at the table. And originally we was going to do the full Last Supper. I did the Jesus figure. He wanted it because he had the table ready and where to go, and we set it there. And I came back and immediately started working on the next figures. And he called me and said, hey, let's don't do any more disciples. And I said, why? And he said, people are coming there every day with picnics and buying stuff and bringing it there and eating at that table. He said, I want to run that. So, and it was a great idea, It cost me a lot of money, but it was a great idea.
Yeah, it seems like you could leave a little room, right? It's like, you got Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, where they're all on one side of the table. You could have done all of them lined up, right?
Well, true. There are people, every time I've been down there since, there's someone sitting there. And they're not, and a lot of times they're eating. But Sometimes they're just sitting there, relaxing, taking it all in.
Now, your sculpture of the Ascension, okay, with Jesus rising up. So what was now how tall is that?
Well, it's on about a 3.5-foot ledge, but the sculpture, I believe, is 16 feet tall. So, and it's surrounded by rocks. There's only one viewpoint you can see that. You walk around the corner, that's what you see. That's the last part of the whole thing is the Ascension.
Was there any special challenges to constructing something that large, or is it just more sections to stack up?
There's always challenges of doing something that tall because you have to have a scaffolding and stuff like that. But I'm fortunate enough to have my own CNC and my own 3D scanners and stuff like that, where I can cut my own foam. And I worked on the upper part and the lower part separately, then put them together towards the end before I made the mold. You know, the mold was a little challenging because, again, you had to be up high or low to put mold material and plaster and all that on.
Now, has there been any talk of how to do the angels up in the sky? You know what I mean?
Oh, well, no.
That would be pretty well, maybe holograms.
Yeah.
So, Mickey, thanks for going through all your work with us.
Well, you're very welcome. Pleasure to meet you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this talk with Mickey. And if you want to see more of his work, his website is below, along with my own website, Paradise Found Studio. And if you like this video, please hit like and please subscribe. We're looking for subscribers, so we'd really appreciate it. Thanks.